and welcome back to the next episode of the Forging Excellence Show. I am Christine. This is Mark. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Christine. Thank you so much. I'm interested in terms of what we're talking about today because I'm flying blind here.
Well,
This
no,
is
I mean,
Christine's show.
well, welcome to life, I guess. Aren't we always,
Yeah.
flying behind? But yeah, a little, I guess, a production note for everyone that watches us on our YouTube channel. The background around me will be changing soon because, as Mark knows, and if anyone listens to my other podcast, you know this as well, but I just bought my first house.
Woo!
So
That's awesome. That's
I
great.
have, which means I have a new job now, which is just getting the house ready. I
Yeah.
realized I am not a skilled laborer. This is
You're
not
gonna
my,
be. You're about to be. You're gonna be so good at drywall.
Google and YouTube has really come in clutch for every little, like, as long as we don't burn the place down before we move in, I think we will be doing all right. But of course, like when you think of houses and everything, location, location, location. And well, first of all, where did you grow up, Mark?
I grew up around here, around Michigan, so just north of Detroit. That's been my hometown. So I dig it. I love the passion. I love the people. I love the environment. It's so cool. The winters, not so much,
Well,
but
see, well, that's why I'm the weirdo. I don't mind the cold. Like, I can't stand when people complain about both. Like in the winter, they're like, "Oh, I hate the cold." In the summer, they're like, "Oh, I hate the hot." I am
yeah.
firmly in. You can keep your like 95-degree days, and I will go out in the snow in shorts. Like that's my true Midwestern
Wow,
blood
man.
pumping through
Yeah.
me. But I actually grew up in Detroit until the summer after my freshman year of high school, which a lot of people they're like, "Oh, what suburb?" I'm like, "No, no, no." Like my address was Detroit, Detroit, Michigan. But it's been so great to kind of set my roots down officially somewhere else. Honestly, this
Yeah.
house journey has been, I'll politely call it a journey. So when we talk about Smitherinas and locations, because of course, I picked where I wanted to live. Well, a blessing and a curse. I'm essentially around the block from my parents, so that has been great, especially in these beginning days. With hey, Dad, can I borrow a ladder and a pizza cutter because we put a
And
pizza in the oven,
and
right?
and
And realize we don't have anything to cut it with.
yeah.
But I love being back around family. My sister owns a bakery. We're closer to her now. And really, it feels like coming back home. Obviously, if I'm close to my parents, I lived in the area for 17 years. So I knew when we were looking around, those were things that were important to me to kind of set my roots down for my house. But when you look at locations to figure out the next Smith Arenas, what do you kind of look for? I'm assuming it doesn't have to be a mile from my parents. So
No,
with
that's our number one goal is to be near your parents. That's it.
which is that's the first criteria. It's
That's
we
it.
keep them all real tight to each
Nothing
other.
else matters but that. No, it's a great question. When we look at locations, we're looking at a couple of things. You always want to help communities where there is demand. And usually that's a mid-major market. So you're looking at where there is where the demand exceeds the inventory. So if you've got, for example, you've got a population that's increasing 1.5, 2.5%, you know that comes with a lot more kids that are engaging in sports. Comes with a population that's engaging in more activity. And they need something. So when we look at places, usually that'll start with a feasibility study, right? We might look at it and go, you know what sounds good is Atlanta. Let's look around Atlanta. We've got some demand, right? Then as we start doing a feasibility study, really start looking at it, we start going where around Atlanta? South, right? Marietta, Alpharetta, right? You start really honing in. And then we try to look at when you go beyond that original location, now you try to say, what is there available where we could do something? Sometimes it's an acquisition. It's a group who's running, a YMCA, or they're running some kind of sports club, and they're ready to exit, and we're ready to come in. That's one. Another one could be it's an industrial building that's 100,000 square feet. That's perfect for what we want to do. Or it's a lot of land where we can do tournament fields, right, and build out. So it depends what it is, what we need, and it depends on the timing of when we want to be in there. So I guess just like when you're looking for a house and you're like, it's got to have a garage and a basement and all that, we've got a couple of things that are required, right, to make it a successful business. And part of that is demographics, and part of that is demand locally. We have sometimes too, and it's fun because you've been on these calls where we talk to somebody and they're like, "Hey, listen, I promised my mom I would do it around our neighborhood, right, or in our hometown." That gets a little tricky because if you are from like a small town in Nebraska or Wyoming, right, you go, "Ooh, that's a tough one." But when they're from an area like they're like from Dallas, you're like, "Oh, okay, great," right? A little easier to try to manage that and blend that together.
I love that. Just to go back a second, so you mentioned a feasibility study. What exactly does that tell you?
Okay, that's good. It is a feasibility study is really an intricate detail. It takes 4 or 5 months to put together, but you are looking at everything from demographics to community play to demand, right? Probably a little over 200 different elements of data that are going into it. And it's going to let you know a couple of things. Number one, if we look kind of big picture, number one, is there a demand for it? Number two, could you make money on it? Number three, where should it be specifically? Right. So when we look at where we're going to be a part of, we've got a lot of kids that are in middle school, high school, college, right? And so our positioning of our places are usually within 30 minutes of where that demand is. So usually you're by high schools, you're by middle schools, you're right in that area. And so that's what we really try to focus on is being in those portions, right? And the feasibility study kind of shows us, gives us kind of some good direction in terms of wayfinding to say somewhere about here, right? And then it's up to our group, our real estate group, to kind of go out and find something around there, right? We don't need to be on Main and Main, right? Right.
Right.
Yeah. We don't
Parking
have to
would be
be,
a
yeah.
nightmare. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to be right downtown, but you have to be somewhere where it's at least accessible, right? Like I know when my son and daughter were growing up, my daughter was lucky enough to have dance studios that were very close.
Mhm.
And it was nice, right? 10, 15 minutes away. That's great. My son, on the other hand, we would drive 45 minutes, an hour and a half out to these places. Now it's hard to do day in and day out. I think for the kids, they get in the car, they're driving. It sucks. But for the parents, that's what really sucks when you're like, I'm just driving around all the time. This is crazy, right? Taking 3 hours just drive time, then spending 2 hours at the facility. You're like, my God, that's my whole evening. So
Right, you blink and it's like 11 p.m. and you're going, "How where?
yeah,
Where
and
where'd my day go? It's past my
yeah,
bedtime too." Like, forget the
yep.
kids.
And parents listening right now know exactly. They're like, "Yep, it's mom's taxi. I know how it is. This sucks." But yeah, I think that's too when we look at it. Why we try to make these facilities 360, so parents aren't doing that and then picking another day to go work out, then picking another time to take their kids to the tutor, right? All these we can blend these in together. We're under one roof. You've got that 360 approach to, where the kids can get their homework done, then they can get out and do their training in the Gronk fitness area. Then they can do the video reviews with their teams, right, in the team rooms. Then they can get out on the courts or on the fields, right, get done. Meanwhile, have a protein drink. So when you have all that together, we're not worried about driving an hour and a half there, maybe catching McDonald's or Taco Bell on the way, right, and then having to get back at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and now starting homework. So
Right,
I
because
think
so when you say 360, you mean all-encompassing, not, like, spinning around in a circle.
no, s- spin around in a circle. That's it. Yeah,
I
get
love
get
I love
dizzy.
the people that will, like, share the little tweets or quotes or whatever when someone's like, "Yeah, we really turned it around. We did a whole and they mean 180, but they say
Oh yeah,
360, and
yeah,
you're like, "I
right.
ended up exactly where I
Yeah.
started
So
from."
you're doing the hokey pokey.
I
Great.
love
Yeah,
that because it makes me think of, like, a Disney World almost, where you can just kind of disappear into this other magical place, and
yeah.
every need you have is taken care of. Did you forget your shoes? I don't know why you're walking in barefoot, but, like, go ahead and go to the store.
Yeah,
If we're
yeah.
hungry, we have a place to eat. If we need to rest, we have a place to go, while also, doing the thing that we came here to do, which
Right.
obviously Disney would be going on the rides. But I mean, I can't think of a place that I had like that growing up. Everything was very, you go to the pool to be at the pool, you go to the field to be at the field, you go to the courts to be at the courts. And hopefully there was maybe a vending machine along the way that
Right.
that could keep you what is your vending machine snack of choice? Just
Oh my God. It's funny because you bring that up, and I've had much practice with this.
You're an expert, would you say? And
I'm an expert. Vending machines, I got it down. Yeah, you always try to look at it, right? Especially, it's one thing if I'm going, right? If I'm just going and I'm not participating, that's one thing,
right.
right? That's easy. I mean, you can swing by wherever and get it. But if I'm participating, that's a little different. My go-to used to be this all the time. And when we say vending machine, gas station.
Right.
So I'd stop at the gas station. It would be either a Cliff Bar, right? Peanut butter banana. Or it would be a Gatorade protein bar, and then like a giant water, right? So we'd have either a smart water or we'd grab like a Gatorade, right? Gatorade Zero.
Well, that
But
seems
yeah,
like
that was kind
health
of it.
food compared to mine. Like every swim practice, I would. So if I wanted salty, it would always be a pack of Chex Mix, but I hate pretzels. So I would eat everything and then give my best friend the bag of pretzels. So she would get that. I think that was probably 80% of the time before my swim practices. It was a little bag of Chex Mix because
Oh,
that's enough sodium for like the entire week. But
right. Well, it's tasty. Hey, it's good.
right,
I don't know. And I don't think a nutritionist would look at what I'm eating and go, "Oh, perfect. Yeah, it's so
right.
well balanced."
Don't worry, in comparison to me though, I think you're doing all right. So
Yeah. But we've done that on the way to games. It's like, hey, let me stop and get like some Wendy's or Taco Bell. And you're like, it's usually you're in the middle of a game, you're running around, you're like, why did I do that? Like it's, I'm dying here on the field.
well, I
But
had
yeah.
I'd stopped the fast food, well, really because there weren't a ton that were super easy for me to get to from where I'm currently living, but won't be for much longer. And we went the other day and I couldn't have believed how expensive fast food has
Oh,
gotten.
yeah, what happened? It's
I
crazy.
mean, go to Burger King and it was like $17 and I'm like, "What?" For, one thing and I'm like, this." Because at that point, it's almost like the fast food and, like, eating healthy is starting to, like, meet each other on on the same, plane. What type
Right.
of meal options or little snacks outside of a vending machine do you picture at as we open more Smitherenas?
You know what? I think it depends on the location, and it's really, you let kind of the local groups kind of, whatever that demand is, you meet that. So you'll see things like protein drinks. That's a pretty easy one to do. I think when you look at the space that's needed, that's an easy one. But really, where you get into it is when you have tournaments, and that's where you start having demand, right? Nobody wants the gas station pizza,
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
Not if they can help
Yeah.
it.
But you see a big thing. Acai bowls are really big right now. Goldfish is always real big as a salty snack. But yeah, you see, little things that are almost like taco bowls, right? Different things like that. Food trucks are great. So it depends, right? I think, like for example, I think in North Carolina, those tournaments will be a little bit of food and beverage kind of inside of the
Mhm.
things you'd expect, right? Might be pretzel bites, might be protein drinks, whatever it might be. But I think when you do a tournament like that, you get the community involved and you bring out a number of food trucks. And that facility set up really well, so it can have a little food truck alley, which is so cool. So if people want Mexican or Greek or whatever it might be, there it is.
I love food trucks. I love just that whole I'm actually going to a carnival later today, so
Are
we're
you
just
are you
keeping
for real?
yeah,
That's
so,
cool. Wow.
it's always the last full week of June, and I've been going to the same one for, gosh, probably I don't even know how long it's been around, but at least the last 15 years or so.
Wow.
But they have their vendors all set up like that, and that was my first. But it's great because whatever you're hungry for, there's going to be some little thing, and we'll see what the new deep fried feature of the carnival circuit is.
Yeah. Well, what's funny? That's come up quite a bit in terms of, do we want our own like restaurant or QSR,
Hmm.
within this place? And I think when we look at it, the restaurant business is a little different business than what we do. I think those that do the restaurant business do it quite well. I'm not sure that I would do it well. So I think when we look at it, I like having people that roll up in a food truck way better than us trying to go, okay, what's on our menu, right? Or what are we doing? We do have one opportunity. We'll probably talk about that in some update, in the future, but we're actually looking at a building right now that's an old ice rink, and attached to
Oh,
it, yeah, which is cool. I mean, it gives you so much space for hardwood courts on one side, right? Volleyball, basketball, futsal, and then on the other side, turf fields. So you go, my God, it's so much space. But it's got attached to it a restaurant, and you go, wow, it's not being used right now. So you go, you look at it, you go, what are we doing with that? We know every inch of what we do with the rest of it. The restaurant, we look and we go, I don't know. Well, what do you think? Right. So we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think that's great. It's funny. So I mentioned before that my sister owns a bakery, and I remember when she first acquired it at this point over a decade ago. But even just first of all, I did not realize how expensive kitchen equipment is, like industrial kitchen equipment.
Yeah.
And on top of that, just to have the current oven removed if we wanted to upgrade it to a different one, when we saw the cost of that, I was like, oh, okay, so this is gonna, live here forever because forget trying to afford a new one. I can even afford
Oh,
to take
yeah.
out the old one. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
It is crazy,
It's
but
nuts, but that's where it's hard to it. You look at costs of fast food going up, right? And restaurants going up. You're right. They're pretty close now, right? No
mhm.
matter what you're getting. But yeah, I think you got to look at that, right? All the equipment, the overhead that people have, right? You expect that to go up. I think we did see since COVID like a real spike
Oh, yeah, definitely.
that went up. I think cost probably due to shipping and things went up, and I think there was no quick demand to bring it down, right, from the owners. They were like, oh, let's see, we'll let the public decide what the prices are. But yeah, you see that you go through, McDonald's or Taco Bell or whatever it might be, and you're like, am I buying stock in the company with this? That amount doesn't seem right.
Right. Where's my board seat? Like, let me
Right, right.
do I get
Seems
to
a little
pick the
weird.
next menu item? What comes with this
Yeah, something.
cost?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I know when we were looking at houses, I mean, I think we probably looked at, I don't know, 25, 30 of them before. Actually, instead of us choosing the house, I really feel like the house chose us because, we put in different
Okay.
offers and, the one I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was a journey. But when I think about, it was so easy to kind of skip some open houses as we looked in to say, oh, I don't like this aspect. I don't like that aspect. I'm assuming that when you're looking at different locations, maybe something as, oh, I don't know, if we're playing basketball, the ceiling height might come into
It's a big
play.
one.
Are
Big one.
there
Yeah.
any other little things that people probably wouldn't think about? Like, oh, this location is great, but obviously, if we're building something new, we can make it how we want. But
Yeah.
if you're looking to acquire something that is already in existence, what are some of those little like behind the scene things that people wouldn't necessarily come to, the front of their mind right away?
Right. Yeah, that's good. It's just like when you look at a house and you're like, I'd love is a big kitchen. I'd love a vaulted ceiling in the family room, right? I think when we look at it in general, we know many times volleyball or basketball is a big part of what we're doing. And so we always try to look at ceiling heights that are 23 feet and higher, right? So I think that's kind of a unique thing. And that's something where you look at the real estate team, that's like first check, right? It has to be that because so many of these buildings are 16, 18 feet high,
Yeah.
which is great. It's great for a lot of things, not for what we do. So I think that's big. I think we try to look for a lot of free span. So when you look at even stanchions that come down in the building to support the roof, we like to look at those in terms of their spacing, right? We like it where they're 50 or 55 feet wide. And that helps us to program it so we can put in basketball courts, volleyball courts, pickleball, right? Get that set as needed. When it's a Butler building or when it's set up where it's, you know, wide open space in the middle, that's awesome for turf. We love that because now you can play football, lacrosse, soccer, right? Because you've got an open space with no stanchions in the middle. So that's super cool. Usually those buildings too, you're getting up in the ceiling height, 25 feet and above. So that's super cool. So yeah, those are kind of what we look at. I mean, there are other little things where you look at parking, right? What happens during, we'll call it church Sunday for tournaments, right? Can we handle all the parking? Even things when you kind of walk in, you kind of know what the flow looks like. So when you got teams coming in and out, right, during tournaments, you try to look and say, how much space is there to kind of gather? If we've got a game and we've got an hour wait before our next game, where are the areas we're looking to hang out? So you don't want to program every square inch of it. You need places
Right.
where people can just kind of hang out. So yeah, so it's neat, but yeah, it kind of goes through in our mind quite a bit. And then I think when we lay it out, if you've got Phil laying it out kind of architecturally, you can kind of see where the spacing is and where it's got room to breathe. And then some of it is wide open. So you look at it and go, all right, what do we do there? How can we help our partners, right? Do we want physical therapy to be a part of what we're doing? Which when we look in Atlanta, that would probably be, we'd probably have a big, maybe 10,000, 15,000 square feet in that building. That'll just be medical, which is super cool. So now you look at 360, we're at 360 plus.
Right?
Maybe,
Right.
maybe,
We
maybe
keep going
390.
around.
Yeah. But yeah, so now the great thing is if they're doing something there now, if there's physical therapy, if the parents need to go to physical therapy or occupational therapy, rehab, right? That kind of thing. They can do that as well as the kids don't have to miss entire practices, game review, all that for rehab while the kids are in the gym getting their workout right in the Gronk fitness area. They can go to their physical therapy appointment, be back for game review, right? Watch their teams practice, help coach a little bit. So that's cool. It keeps them closer to the team.
And of course, when we think about, the SMITH acronym, sportsmanship, mindfulness, inclusivity, teamwork, and health, especially when you're talking about physical therapy, rehab, if I kind of, my favorite letter of that mix, the M part, the,
Hmm.
mindfulness slash
Yeah.
mental health slash meditation, whichever, I can keep going with the M names. But I think until people have to recover from an injury or a surgery, they don't always know or anticipate the mental toll that that healing process is going to take, especially when you're so used to being with the team, being on the field, being able to just, walk up the steps to your house, drive your car somewhere, and, still having that team there with you, I think can help to keep it going, because I know it can be incredibly frustrating having to yield to the time frame of whatever healing needs to occur.
Yeah. And I think you add on to that, right? It's one thing where you feel like yourself, like, you see a lot of these athletes coming back a little too early because they don't want to
Right.
miss out. But you add to the frustration of just being able to like put on your shoes, right? If you have a
Yes.
knee injury, right? Get in the shower, right? Little things like that that we take for granted. But add on to the stress of that, right? Like if you're in a wheelchair or whatever it might be, if you're on crutches trying to get through school, then add on to the fact that your thoughts start creeping in like, well, what if I come back and I'm not in shape enough to be a starter again?
Mhm.
What if somebody else takes my spot? Right. And being around the team really helps them to be able to kind of know where they're at and help support other people without feeling that threat. Right. Because I think we worry about things that will never, ever come to fruition, but our thoughts, get in there and kind of bug us. And it's like, no, 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 just be who you are. Let the healing process happen. Right. It's not on your time, right? Your body will dictate that. So yeah, it's great. But the more we can do to keep teams together, oh man, that's great, right? Sometimes we don't have space for medical, and that's fine. It is what it is. But anytime we do have that opportunity, phenomenal.
I know at this point, it's probably been about 8, 10 years since I had a pretty significant foot injury. And I remember like, the whole that whole moment. And it's all from tripping, of course. It's nothing spectacular.
Yeah,
No, like I
that's
was, saving a baby from
no,
rolling into traffic or something. Like
yeah,
I actually tripped, and I'm a knitter. So I was going into our family room, and I was carrying all of my like knitting stuff. So the yarn, the needles, and whatever else I had, and because I was carrying something, when I fell, I didn't brace myself the way that I normally would have. And the sound that occurred as I, at the time, my sweet little dog that well, not little, she was like 95 pounds, but my dog, she was blind. And so she heard me in my like, oh gosh, what just happened? And she came to check it out. And of course, not being able to see, where I am, she stepped directly on my foot. And it was just like, I
perfect.
saw stars, I
Yeah,
saw everything. And
yeah,
honestly, when I first fell, I thought I had broken both of my ankles. Like I army crawled, like, over to the couch. Meanwhile, my mom's looking at me like, all right, we gotta, we
wow,
gotta figure out
yeah. My
what our
God,
next step
jeez,
is. So once that initial shock wore off, I put pressure on my left foot. It was like, okay, okay, like it's coming back. The ankle's not broken, like
yeah.
everything's, and then just that slightest amount of pressure on my right foot and that searing pain. And it was already, swelling up like a balloon. And it was
Yeah.
that, oh, like we gotta, all
Uh-oh.
right,
Uh-oh.
emergency
Yeah.
room, here we come. But once I got back and truly understanding, non-weight bearing for how many weeks, and then I
Right,
still have to
right.
gradually go it up while going to physical therapy. I
Yep,
can't do any of these things. And it was a very humbling, and because I feel like you take your health for granted until something like that happens.
for sure,
And all of
man.
a sudden you're like, I miss all those days I could just get out of bed and like
Walk.
walk to another exactly. Like and it is, I mean, my foot will still let me know when it's about to rain, so I have that little fun party
Yep.
trick.
Yep. Yep.
But if I would have had some of the skills that I had now, I feel like that recovery would have been a little less, because you really feel isolated. You feel like
Yeah.
you are trapped in your little space. It's taking you, 5 times as long just to accomplish any little task that you might want to, just going to the kitchen becomes a whole adventure. And
Exactly.
that community and that, because when I think about being around your team, that's really just being around support
Mhm.
and just feeling like you are still a human existing in the world.
Yep.
That
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I love it too, because like remember Herman Moore was talking about, that oh, as a matter of fact, we got to change that out. That should be a Herman Moore jersey,
I
right?
think everyone, I'm gonna your
Gronk.
jersey budget is
Yeah.
about to go through the roof.
Right.
Every
We need it.
every
But
episode we're gonna switch it
yeah. Right. Yeah,
out.
we need to. That's a good idea. But I like where he says that, right? Sports really can change the trajectory of a child's life. And I think for many reasons, but you're right. A lot of that is because of the support you get. Right. There are so many times like I look back and I'm like, my God, from when we played sports back in 8th grade,
Right.
like I'm still friends with those guys, right? High school, still friends with those guys. It's incredible. So it's good, but it's so bonding, right? When you're going through just in one game, right? You're going through a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of IQ and EQ that's needed during the game, but you get to know somebody in sports pretty well, right? When you play with them, you know how they are during times of stress. You know how they are when they're up, right? And it is an insurmountable lead. You know you're going to win. How are they acting, right? Versus the other way, you're down, and I, unless God comes down and helps you out, you are losing this game, right?
Right.
But yeah, how are you acting then, right? Are you pointing fingers and saying, "Man, it's because of you we lost," right? You shouldn't have dropped that ball, right? You should have made that pass, whatever it might be. Or do you kind of accept it and say, "Hey, let's finish strong. Let's see what we do, and then we can regroup and come back stronger the next time." So I think even like our men's soccer group that we're with, really good. I think everybody on that team is very consistent in terms of there are games we are blowing out a team, right? We're up 5-0 and it's like, no, 5-0, they're not coming back. Then there are other times where we have no idea how to hit a net. You're like, what is going on, right? It's tough, but I think our guys all very supportive every time. And it's even little things, right? When you're switching out, and they'll even compliment like, hey, great control on that one, or good pass, or whatever it might be. Just little things that help you out, that make you feel good about it. And then when we regroup and come back out, I think we're all the stronger for it.
No, absolutely. And even, if I think of my dad and stories that he will tell from, just his last 70 years of life, I think if people kind of put themselves in this spot as well, so many of his stories that he loves to reminisce about and just loves to tell people because of either how funny they are, or how crazy, like you won't believe that this happened type of thing. It almost always revolves around some type of sporting event. Like he loves to tell the
Yeah.
story of trying out for a softball team where he was in the outfield, someone hit a fly ball, and he was so focused on catching that ball to make a good impression that he didn't realize that he was running directly into a fence post, knocked himself off and would like knocked himself out. And when he
Yep.
finally came back to, the first question was, "Did I catch the ball?" They're like, "Dude, we just want to make sure like you're still with us.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we appreciate that hustle."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
just a fun way to experience life,
Yeah.
because what other activities do you get to do where you are able to hit so many different boxes of, I'm building relationships, I'm working on my body, my mind is going, I'm learning these skills of how to deal with defeat, how to deal with a victory and not turn into a gloating like I'm the best, like how to still
Yeah.
keep your ego in check while you are feeling that flood of, maybe I am the best pickleball player that ever existed. Like,
I don't know, but it reminds me of hearing Ricky Bobby talk, right? Where he's like, I wake up and I'm basically the best. But yeah, it's incredible. But yeah, I think that's what we'll see too. Is I love the fact that throughout the decades to come, we're going to see a lot of kids that do great. They make their varsity team. They go on to play for college. Some will go on to play professionally. They'll coach. They'll do things. I think overall, right, these kids don't need to be the best, right? You don't
Right.
have to be Lionel Messi out there, right? You don't have to be Tom Brady out there. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be your best. And I think that's
Exactly.
great. So whether that be on the field, right, or just them professionally, right? What kind of person did you turn out to be?
And even one more layer on top of that, being your best for whatever your best is at that moment.
Yeah.
AKA, if you are coming back from an injury, do not expect to be able to play the way that you did a few months before, and being okay with that and
Yeah.
knowing that, everything in life will ebb and flow. And that's how it's meant to be. That's how
Mhm.
it's going to be, whether you like it or not. So if you can go along with that ride a little bit easier, everything else around it will become easier. Because at the end of the day, you're going to spend your time doing something. One of my favorite little fun facts about me is that I have never owned any gaming system whatsoever. So I've never
This is a
had
travesty.
right?
Travesty
I've
should be illegal.
Nintendo, PlayStation, going back, like, it's just, and I've had friends that when they find out, legitimately ask, like, what did you do?" Because they think of all the hours that they spent,
Yeah.
playing whatever games, and I was like, "I don't know, I guess my sister and I played outside," but it's that, you will find something to fill your time. And when we talk about these facilities, I know that there was something that our dear friend Earl always used to say. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, Earl the Twirl. We still miss him, but man, great guy. But
We'll
yeah,
always miss him.
yeah, he was so eloquent. He said something like, every child deserves a place to go where they can be their best, but it's up to us to make sure that door is there for them to go through.
Exactly. And
Powerful.
I mean, it's one of those things that makes so much sense when you hear it, but it's a real reminder of, we can't put blame on, oh, these kids are just getting in trouble. If they have no place to go close by, that gives them an opportunity to do something else. Like that's on, I mean, I say us, it's just the collective, community, universe,
Hmm.
worlds, whatever the case may be. But that's absolutely true that that opportunity has, like, they have to have the choice to even go there. They're not
Yeah,
gonna drive 4 hours somewhere to just, go to a place they can't afford to get in the doors anyway. Like,
yeah.
it's
And I'll tell you, look at the communities. So if we look at, like Charlotte, we look at, South Boston, we look at Atlanta, Lakeland, Florida. When you look at these places, the great thing is we know, right, from what's gone on over the past 24, 25 years nationally, we know when we come in there, it not only gives kids a place to be, right, but it also benefits the communities. These places bring in 41 to call it $62 million per year in spending. And you go, my God, it's incredible because you have so many people that are coming into the area that are spending time at these facilities. Kids are going to put their energy in one place or the other, right? If we can help with
right.
that and
Yeah.
give them something positive, that's where they're going to put their energy.
So like I mentioned earlier, I did grow up in Detroit, and one of my favorite things from the last few months has been after Detroit hosted the NFL draft and seeing all the comments coming out of like, I didn't know Detroit had this much to offer. Like whatever picture they had in their mind once they actually experienced it, like, oh my gosh, I had this totally wrong in the best way possible. And I think a lot of these
Yeah, yeah.
communities, as they get that sport tourism to come to their locations, 9 times out of 10, that is the exact same sentiment of, even if it's like, "Okay, we gotta go to what town, where?" And then when you get there, it's like, "Oh, wow, I had no idea that, North Carolina had this much to offer." Because if I've only ever seen, my lovely little Midwestern cornfields, like, if you I was
Right.
like, there's still water, but I love those little, have you ever been to a
Yeah.
place that pleasantly surprised you once you got there of like, "I"
You know what? I love traveling, but everywhere I go is, it's super cool. Like, we'll go like throughout Michigan. A lot of people think of Detroit when you think of Michigan. You think big city, all that. Well, we know as you go up to Pictured Rocks, right? And you go up north and so much, probably the best public golf out of any state. It's, I always love these towns anywhere around Traverse City, all that. When we travel, we go south, right? Like, you look around Atlanta, everybody thinks, oh, Atlanta's so busy. You got the loop and oh my God. But yeah, if you're just outside of there, well, how about, we went and tubed to Chattahoochee and you're like, oh my god, jumping off rocks and into the river. You're like, that is so cool. It's so much fun, and I think every town has something really cool to offer. It's a matter of finding it.
Yeah, I mean, that literally hidden gems for a reason. They're hidden, but they are still gems. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
our feasibility study is that map to find our little hidden treasures.
yeah. There you go. I like that.
I mean, I joke about it, but it really does seem like feasibility studies are our treasure map to find our next gold. So, what little X's do we already have on our treasure map for some little hidden gems that we are excited to share with the world?
Well, we've got a number of projects that are in the works in, one spot or another. Either we're acquiring a facility, we're starting to develop out a facility. We're talking about planning of, 120 acres and what we're doing there. But it kind of looks like this if we kind of, go from north to south or, east to west, whatever we're doing. But you'll see, we started off as a very Michigan centric facility. So you'll see we've got a number of projects in Michigan around Detroit, Ann Arbor, Canton area, which is nice to see. So it kind of surrounds Detroit. We'll probably get into the west side of the state around Grand Rapids as well. Then if you look at like New York, what we're doing, right? Massachusetts around South Boston area, which is great. We go down to my gosh, Danville, Virginia. We go in North Carolina, right? Around Charlotte, Atlanta, Lakeland, Florida, over to Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, I'll go there
Um,
for the barbecue.
let's
That
go.
is,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll do the food tour of all the
yeah.
cities.
Well, we got to see too. Yeah, we got to see between Nashville and then what we're doing in Dallas, right? How that compares. And then yeah, we've got Oklahoma City, between Norman and Oklahoma City. And then we've got Salt Lake City, Utah. So there's a number of projects coming up which are very exciting. But it is funny because I think whenever we talk about development, I've always been, since I was a little kid, right? Zero patience, but I always like to know the information now, right? And so when you talk about a feasibility study, you talk about 4 or 5 months to do that. It teaches you patience as you talk about buying land and developing out, right? You start looking at land being 21 months to build out, or to actually find land and get that rezoned, and then to build out over 18 months. It really gives you a sense of patience and knowing that we're in it for the long haul. But that's why I do love acquisitions. That is like, let's exchange keys and roll, right?
Well, it's funny because my whole life, I mean, truly, like going back to grade school, I would have people comment on my patience, and I never understood it because for me, it was this is just the way I am. Like I'm not doing anything extra that
Yeah.
feels like someone should be highlighting that. Oh, you have a you're good with patience. I'm like I don't know, I just whatever. But I think to take your little statement of how you want to know now, I want to know when it's ready to be known, which sounds a little like, ooh, but I don't want the drink from a water hose. And there have been so many times in my life where I've known something, and then by the time it was time to act on, that thing has changed 1,000 times
Oh yeah.
in 1,000 ways. And it's like,
Yeah.
just let me know when it's ready.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
cool with even go back to the house process. There were definitely some patience that needed to be involved. And of course it would have been great to, cross it off the list when if I could have sooner. But then when you have that benefit of hindsight to look back to see how everything played out exactly how it needed to play out in order to get what was absolutely meant for me, I don't want to get something that is less than what I'm deserving just because I wanted to force the needle to move further before it was ready.
Hmm.
And part of, I've mentioned before that I'm a daily meditator. One of the skills that I've kind of cultivated with that a little bit as well is, I mean, of course, I am still human. There's going to be times where, it'd be nice if the waiting part could go a little bit less. Like no one loves to go to an amusement park and see a, hour and a half line and say, "Oh, great. This is
Yeah.
more fun than the ride. Let me just stand in the heat with all these strangers for the next
Yeah.
hour." Like no. Like I'm of course still human. But when it comes to those bigger kind of life altering things, to just think of if everything in my life so far has played out in the exact timing that it has needed to, why would I start to think now would be any different? And so just because something isn't how I think I want it right now, like maybe it's because something better is waiting for me in a month or so, in 6 months or so, in a year or so. And whether it comes to relationships, jobs, houses, any of these things, and not to mention, it'd be terrifying to think I had that amount of like power to sway the universe to do something that just because I think I want it that way, like
Yeah, yeah,
no, that sounds horrible. Like
yeah.
I don't want that. I'll just and it's also not sitting back and, doing nothing and just thinking that all these wonderful things are just going to fall into my lap. Like even if you think of a team playing sports, you have your practices, you have your games that even a championship winning team is going to lose some of their games on the season unless, you go 16-0 sometimes, but or 0-16, like both both
Right.
ends exist, but you still have tough
Hmm.
practices. You
Hmm.
not that I would know from
Yeah.
personal
Hmm.
experience or
Yeah.
anything, but you still have to show up when it's easy, when it's hard, when it's whatever it is that day. And it's that constant showing up for yourself, for your team, for everything, knowing that that end goal of let's kind of keep going with sports of winning the game, winning the championship, being the MVP of that team. You don't just get that because you did well in the playoffs. You get that because of how you showed up for yourself and everyone else every single day before leading up to that.
Yeah. Look at Jalen Brown. Great
Yeah.
example of it, right? That's a guy who just didn't just perform well in the finals. And all of a sudden, hey, where'd you come from, buddy? Where you been?
Right.
No, all season he's been the guy, right? He's been incredible, incredible teammate, uplifting, right? Great mind for the game, and then brought it all together, kept everybody calm, said, I know we're gonna win, right? Brought it home, won the championship. So that's pretty awesome. Lost his ring, but in the parade. But yeah, did a great job. So that's cool. You're right. You're exactly right. It starts in the off season, right? And all the way through your finals and it just cycles through. And yeah, I think the people who you really respect and you tend to look toward when you need a play, when you feel at lost on the field, you're like, what are we doing? Right. There's always people you can look to that kind of calm you down, get you focused, right? And you're right back in it. And that's awesome. And Jalen seems to be one of those guys.
And I think it truly starts from the moment that you wake up every day. How you like that first step out of bed, how your mindset is, how you're looking at things. Because I have another podcast that's more medication. What am I saying? It is medication for your brain, but
It is, yeah.
meditation
Yep.
focused.
Yeah.
And one of the topics that I was talking about the other day was, you know, you can put a positive spin on it, or you can put a negative spin on it. But either way, you're still putting a spin on it. And while you can't necessarily choose what you're having to put that spin on, because everything in life is essentially a neutral thing, we decide if it's good or bad. Something that's great for me can seem horrible to you, and vice versa.
Hmm.
So, what spin we put on it, that is what we can control. So when I wake up every day, even if I mean, just yesterday was one of those, comedy of errors for my morning. Spilled my water all over my desk. My notebook is soaked. My keyboard is like, it still works, but I had a moment of like, uh-oh,
Yep.
it went
Yep.
swimming. You go to get a towel, you stub your toe along the way, and it's like, oh my gosh, like everything's like, no, like it's take a second, take a deep breath.
Yep.
And
Yep.
first of all, super thankful that I have a keyboard to even mess up, which means I have a job that I'm able to show up to every day, which means I live in a house that I can, with furniture that I can stub my toe on to go get the towel, to go clean up the mess that I made. Like the world is not going to end just because I'm a little bit clumsy. But I think it can be so easy for people to get stuck in that negative mindset of, oh, another day. Oh my gosh, it's already raining. Oh, and I gotta get gas, but I didn't get gas like yesterday. Oh, this is all my like it's again, we are assigning a spin in that situation, a negative spin to something that is just a neutral. Yeah, your car needs gas to go. Okay, that's fine. But you know what? Maybe you are avoiding an accident that would have happened from the 5 minutes you had to take to go to now put gas in your car. Like you never know.
Yeah.
And it's just taking everything what it is and knowing the one thing I'm always in control of is my attitude. And back to what you were saying, when you're playing on a team and just learning that attitude control, whether it's dealing with the game where you are just getting your butts handed to you, or the other side where, you can't miss a shot. Like everything is just, I love my little saying of the scissors gliding, where like that just hooks
Right. Oh
on that
yeah. Yeah.
magical, like here goes everything. Because these are skills that need to be learned. It's not something that you just inherently I mean, life would be a whole lot easier and, greater if you could just snap your fingers and have that knowledge. But I think especially younger kids, a classroom is a very controlled, for a reason, experience. But when you're able to play sports and really feel all of those emotions, you are then able to learn how to control, know what to use, know what to let go, because there is, like I said, an ebb and flow with everything.
Yeah, your EQ, right,
Yeah,
grows where you start learning situational awareness, right? And when is it time to kind of go Hulk rage,
right,
right? And when is it time to allow that to pass, right?
right.
I think it's great. I remember hearing I was young, I was probably 8 years old playing baseball, and I remember hearing the coach say, "All right, guys, got to have a short-term memory," and I'm like, I did not understand that at all. I'm like, all right, whatever. Yeah, we're up to bat. Okay. I had no idea what that meant. And it kept echoing, kind of rattling around my brain. And I didn't understand it until probably we were, my buddy Mike and I were coaching soccer. And it's little kids that are 8, 9 years old. And our guy who's in goal let a ridiculous goal in. We're like, what just what just happened? And what did I say right away? Hey, short-term memory, let it go. We'll worry about the next shot. And then it kind of clicks. I'm like, oh God, that only took me 30 years to
Right. But you know what? I mean, you joke about that, but at least it
yeah.
clicked, because there are
Yeah.
so many people out there that have had, this type of knowledge attempted to be, given to them, but
Yeah.
until it clicks, it does not click, which so when I talk about teaching adult swimming, or like adult beginner swimming, which is still one of my favorite jobs that I
Mhm.
had, one of the unique challenges with that is, as you explain and they can see, they understand what they have to do, but their body is just not cooperating. So you have to try to find like five different ways to explain, try to do this because they can see it, but just something isn't clicking. And until that moment when a certain explanation finally does click, I mean, you can try 1,000 times, but you need that, like, oh, that little aha moment of now I get it. Like, my brain is trying to tell my body to do something. I don't know why it's not
Right. Yeah.
doing it. But then
Yeah.
when it does click, that moment of clarity, that's such a confidence builder, because all of us, because for a while you feel like, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't, like, how come everyone else is understanding this and I seem like I can't grasp it? It has nothing to do with what you are capable of or not capable of. If anything, it just talks to the strength of your teacher, because all of the best teachers, coaches that I've had in life were able to have that unique explanation, based on who they were talking
Mhm.
to have that moment that clicked.
And that's it. Yeah. And you love when somebody explains like that, where you go, now I get it. You know what was
Yeah.
like that for me is at Michigan State was we had a statistics class. And I remember the first day we're in there, and yeah, I've always been pretty strong at math, but we're in there and I'm kind of going, did I miss like 3 classes?
Right.
How is this the first class? I'm like, oh my God. I remember leaving there going, I don't know what I just heard. That like, am I a semester? Like, what happened? I don't know what's going on. Then the next day we went in there and we're probably halfway through and I asked a couple of questions and the professor did a great thing, kind of addressed us. And I mean, it's a lot of kids in there, right? A lot of students took the time to kind of go, let's look at it this way. And I even forget the way he did it, what analogy it was. And all of a sudden it was
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, duh. Right. Now all of a sudden it made sense. And I'm like, I just needed that little bit of look at it from a different perspective. And I'm like, oh, great. Right. Then we rolled. Great class. Love that.
I mean, I don't think I'll ever say I loved a statistics class, but I am very proud for you. Math
Yes,
was
very good.
not anyone who knows me know math is not my strong suit in any way. Like, I'm thankful for my iPhone with my calendar with my
Yeah, with
calculator
the
in it.
calculator.
See, I don't even want to think
Yeah.
about a calculator. My brain
No,
just
no.
shuts it out. Numbers,
Yeah,
no, we don't need those.
yeah. Well,
Even
good.
as a knitter, that was the one time because as I worked through different patterns, different gauges, different sizes for sweaters, I was like, why is there so much math involved? Like
Right, right.
some of those
Dang it.
math teachers were right. I do need to
Yeah.
use this in my real life.
This is
Never thought it would show up in knitting, but even
yeah.
with what sport do you think involves the most mathematic like
Can I
mindset?
give you a hot take on it?
Yes, please do.
Okay. I mean, because you can look at like baseball, you can kind of look at bowling, even, right? You can kind of do that. The one that I think that wears you out more mentally with a lot of the math and calculations and geometry that you're doing than anything else is golf.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're even part weatherman. Like you have to
Yeah.
calculate for the wind.
Oh, the wind and the barometric pressure. And yeah, I'll tell you, that's what I find is like when we play golf, I love it. I enjoy it so much. But I do notice that you don't get tired physically, right? And hopefully you're not swinging 100 times,
Right.
right? Yeah. But even with that, it's more mentally draining where you feel like you've been through like a geometry quiz, right? An algebra quiz or whatever it might be, where you're like, wow. But yeah, every shot you're kind of doing a lot of math. You're trying to put variables in, but that's what I think.
No, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to golf, though, because when I would be, swimming, skating, whatever sport, when you practice, you get that muscle memory and you just it just flows right out. But when it comes to golf, you have to do that, math equation first before you let the muscle memory kick in to let you know what to do, which maybe that's why I always pick sports. That maybe that's why golf was like last on my list. I subconsciously knew that, that there was going to be more math involved. So before we kind of finish this conversation today, I do have one fun little question for you.
Oh,
So
okay.
as we've talked about locations and everyone kind of having its unique flavor, more so than just the barbecue that you might get, but what the feasibility studies uncover. Let's say outside of the typical. So when I say typical, I mean you have your hardwood courts, your fields, your ice, maybe your pool. So none of those would count. If you had some extra space in a Smith Arenas, I
Mhm.
know what my answer is. I'll share after you. But what would you like to put in there?
And so we're excluding medical, we're excluding fitness, speed and
Yes, yes. So
agility.
everything that we've
Okay.
talked about. So when you
All
think
right.
of what you normally come across in like these facilities currently.
All right. I would say this, and this might be a bit of a weird one, but so when Mike and I used to coach our kids for soccer, right? They were 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. Um, I think that's where my mind goes to immediately. And I think it's looking at it. The kids were so engaged and loved to be on the team. Yeah, they're learning a sport. They can learn any sport, right? We happen to be playing soccer. But after they won, we would go and we would get ice cream. And that was awesome. It was for the players, for their little siblings. It was awesome and always a fun time. And we've got so many pictures from that. And the kids always talk about that. I mean, the kids are now 24, right? And still mention those kind of things. So yeah, I think if we had a little spot, it would be a little ice cream shop, a little candy area, something like that.
No, that actually reminds me of a story when I was young. I'm talking like maybe 5 or 6 years old, if that, when my mom loves to tell this story. We were up north at a Sanders shop. So
Oh
ice
yeah.
cream, hot fudge, all that good stuff. But I guess little Christine and, my sister, it wasn't quite ice cream time for us. And so my mom told us that the only thing that they sold was liver and onions, which was our like least favorite thing in the world. So she said that we very loudly in the middle of the store went, "Ew, gross. This place is disgusting. I don't want to eat here." So we fully believed her liver and onions lie. Well, I'm sure everyone else that was in the ice cream shop got a nice little laugh from that. But
Yeah,
I mean, I'll
Sanders is
be I'll
awesome,
be
man. Come on now.
I'll be a little greedy, and if I could kind of tuck anything away in a corner, I think it would be a racing sim rig. I mean, maybe I'm a
Oh
little
yeah.
biased
Oh
since
no,
there
no.
is
Yeah,
one,
that's a good call. Yeah.
in our apartment, soon to be house,
Yeah.
but it's just such a unique thing that, I didn't get involved. I say involved, involved as a fan in motorsports until, my 30s. And again, also a lot of math in that. Maybe again, subconsciously, I was like, oh nope, they got they
No,
have
yeah,
things to figure out. That engineering is a whole other, can of worms.
oh my gosh, yeah.
But I think that I mean, talk about an expensive sport. Of course, hockey's gonna be super expensive, but you are not, having a race car that you have to
Yeah,
you have to
F1,
get into
jeez.
or, even starting with karting. And I think just giving people access to something that for I think the vast majority of people, even me now, when I look at if I just wanted to do a few hot laps, I'm like, what? It's like a couple $100 for like a few minutes? Like what?
Right,
Never
right.
mind.
Yeah,
I'll go on the sim rig, but I
yeah.
love how esport is growing in that aspect. And from iRacing to, I'm sure there's a whole other bunch of programs that I'm not even aware of, but just the fact that current drivers will do this in their free time just speaks to, this is, like I said, that muscle memory practice. If you can't always get track time, or if it's raining, or whatever weather from where you might be. I mean, obviously in Michigan, I don't think we're going to be going out anytime from like October through early March. Or we might
Right,
have
yeah.
practice drifting. I don't know
Yeah,
about
yeah,
about
let's do it,
racing,
yeah.
but I think it'd be awesome to have a sim rig or two and just let people experience something outside of course, it's different than you go to a Dave and Buster's or an arcade
Right,
type of
yeah,
place and just like putz around in that. But to get a real feel, because
yeah.
the one of the things that surprised me the most is how much pressure you actually need to apply for the brake to work as it is intended. And I mean, I was full on like all of my might, everything that I had. And it was like, all right, you're at like 40% of what it has to be. And I was like, are you kidding
Like, "That's all I've got, that's
me?
it, that's it." Yeah, those guys
So
are
we can
so
drive
strong.
the race car to the ice cream shop.
There you go, there you go. But that would be cool, it'd be neat to have Sims, especially you look at places like where, you look at, like, Charlotte, right? Places where we have racing here nationally is pretty cool. I think that might give us an excuse. Can we go do one in Melbourne?
Oh, heck
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, why
Let's
not? I think we gotta go to
trust me, I don't need
Australia.
too much,
Yeah,
right, I'll jump at
let's
any
go.
excuse.
Yep, let's
All
go.
right, so last question, just
Yep.
because let's tie this up with a nice little bow as we've talked about locations, and I keep going back to food from our ice cream to my Chex Mix. So let's put sports facilities aside for a second. If you could go to any location, we'll talk US, with the sole purpose of just eating one item there, like going there
Oh,
to eat something like from the source, where would you go? And what is that? Like, is it a Philly cheesesteak in Philadelphia? Is it
wow.
a, barbecue in? Are we going Nashville? Are we going North Carolina? Are we going Texas? Something I'm not thinking of. Is there one item that you're like, I would travel here just to
Yes.
get off the plane, eat this one thing, and then come back home?
Yes. Boy, there's so many different things you could do, but here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go Austin, Texas. We're gonna go in a little strip mall to a little Tex-Mex restaurant, and we're gonna have the homemade churros. That's what I would do right
Ooh.
there. That's it.
I let's see. I would be flying to Maine to get a lobster roll.
Oh, great call.
That would
Yeah.
be my and okay, so there's two types. What would your type be? There's hot, no, there's cold with mayo or hot with butter. Which one are you getting for your
Oh, you know
lobster
what?
roll?
I've had some good ones. And then down in West Palm Beach, when we were down there, I think I had the best lobster roll I've ever had. And that one, oh my God, the way they made that, it was purely delicious. Was it hot? Let's see. It was it was cold
Because I think
with
those are I forget
butter.
what region
Yeah.
it is, but yeah, one's
Yeah.
typically cold with mayo and the other is hot with butter.
Yeah, this one was I just remember going, "My God, that's how you make one. That is a lobster roll." It was so good. It was so delicious. Of course, it had been an all day, right? Where we're doing our stuff, so I was incredibly hungry too. I'm sure that helped. But yeah, that was great. That was my favorite.
Yeah, I'm hot with butter all the way. That
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
absolute best.
Why
All
is it
right,
butter
so
butter makes
before we
everything better?
go, Right, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
well, we were just making dinner the other, and I'm not a huge, like, chef type person, but I was making dinner that night, and my husband was like, "Why are these carrots, like, we follow the same ingredient, like, why do your carrots taste so much better?" I'm like, "'Cause I tripled the amount of
Yeah.
butter that the recipe
Yeah, a
calls
lot of
for."
butter, a lot of
Like,
butter. Yeah.
I came from a Polish family where I didn't realize mashed potatoes were supposed to be white and not yellow until I was, like, in my teens. Like, we wasn't the Yukon Gold potatoes, it was just,
Yeah,
toss a few sticks of butter in there
that's
and
funny. Yep,
it'll
that's right, that's
it'll
right.
even itself out at the end. Well, as always, it has been wonderful getting to chat and catch up. And I mean, I'm sure people love, hearing you and I talk to each other. But
Probably not.
as we line up as we line up more guests, do you have anyone in mind, whether it is a specific person or just like a type of guest that you would love to see on the show?
Yeah, I think it's all about the type of guest. I love to see people who are more interested in helping others than themselves. But somebody I think we got to get in there, get on the show is Greg Jones, right? Michigan State Spartan, just oh my God, as a linebacker, just really held it down there. Went on, won a Super Bowl with the Giants, which was great. But now he's been doing a lot of training, helping kids do their college combines and get ready for NFL combines. So he's doing some serious training. But personally, too, he and his wife are getting into bodybuilding competitions, which I know nothing about, but I'd love to hear what they're doing for those. So yeah, let's get Greg on there.
Oh, I would love that. And just for everybody listening, if you think that you might be a good fit for our show and have a story that you would love to share with the world, please give us an email at forgingexcellencepod@gmail.com. So forging excellence pod for podcast, forging excellence pod@gmail.com, and reach out. You'll probably talk to me on the other end. And if and we'd love to, like I said, if you have a story to share, please let us know what it is, and we'd love to have you on the show and share it with the world.
Awesome. That's great. Well, heck, another good show. Well done, Christine.
Well, I mean, well done to you, to everyone, because it's, like I said, it's how we face every day, how we show up for ourselves, the promises that we make to each other. And I love as our show just keeps growing its legs and reaching out
Yeah.
into the world,
Yeah.
and, letting people know more about me, more about you, more about Smith Arenas, but most
Right.
importantly, more about all the stories that we have to share. So, thank you so
Exactly.
much as always. It is a delight to borrow some of your energy for the rest of my day. And we will talk to everyone later.
Bye.
Bye.